Rent prices increasing nationwide. Housing expert David Rauch joining us again on KURV. Dave, what's the average price for a rental property nationwide?
Nationwide, it was $1,600. It's risen a little bit. It's now about $2,000 a month rent average.
When's the last time we saw $1,600, Dave?
That was about a year ago. So rents are rising. Evictions are rising, too.
Just quick math on that with 13% increase. That's well north of the inflation rate. But inflation's still north of 8% for everybody, producer and consumer. Where do you see all this headed now over the next year? Like this time next year, do you see rent continuing to increase at the same place, 13-14%?
No, actually, rents have stalled a little bit here in September. They've stopped increasing, and the main thing that's changed is that the housing industry, new home industry, the purchase of new homes is completely stalled, and that has to do with the rising interest rates. And the cost of owning a home is now much greater than the cost of renting. So renting will continue to increase a little bit, but the new home market has just tanked.
Well, that toys with inventory, and the fact that no new homes are on market, and with more demand for renting, you'd think that the rent would still increase over the next year because of all the pressure, all the demand for rental properties.
Yeah, rents are going to continue to increase. We've got 2 to 3 million people, nobody really knows, that have entered our country that are putting some upward pressure on rents.
That's true.
And now that people can't buy homes because they're so expensive and the cost to finance them, interest rates are so expensive, rents are going to continue to increase.
The 2 to 3 million people housing expert David Rauch is referring to, yes, it's the folks who crossed illegally, plus the folks who evaded and are living in the shadows out there somewhere looking for low-rent places somewhere. The folks who were processed by Border Patrol and were released into the country, at some point, I think an immigration attorney explained to me that after about several months, 8 months or 12 months, there's subsidies for rent for them as well. So that will be paid by the government. So I'm thinking investment into government-subsidized or low-rent properties, apartment buildings, or housing units, that might be, a smart investment for some builders if they create more of those apartments in big cities. What do you think?
Well, that could be. I have to take exception. When you say the government pays for it, you have to remember that's you and me.
That's true.
The working folks are the ones paying for all these people coming into the country and subsidizing not just their housing, but subsidizing their food and their education. So, but the affordable housing market that you're referring to is kind of like a shadow market. It's not quite the free market that we're used to in housing, because when the government subsidizes a market like it does with the affordable housing market, it doesn't respond to simple supply and demand like a regular market. So it's hard to predict what's going to happen with the affordable housing market and subsidized housing, because at some point the government's going to change what it does.
And I stand corrected, because yes, it is the American taxpayer that pays all the bills. And in this case, it actually will be our grandchildren, since most of this is, pretty much all of it is deficit spending anyway. I guess the better question would have been, because I know you're a building expert as well, as far as construction, I understand, as far as, ProTech building services. The better question would have been, does a situation like this, where, let's face it, we've 2-3 million people, well, 2 million we know of, about another million or two, so that's about 4 million more in this country looking for somewhere to sleep. Does this spur, in the construction industry, do you see it spur increased construction of apartment complexes or, quote unquote, affordable housing that is subsidized by the taxpayer?
Yes. It's not just all the people that have come into the country in the last 3 years. People have left the cities. A lot of people have left the cities and are moving to the suburbs, which that too is spurring rental construction. And also people have left high-tax states, New York and California specifically, and they're headed to other states and suburbs in particular, and that's spurred new home and rental construction. But the problem is that while that demand is up, the cost to finance that construction is way up.
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's true.
So we're already seeing new home construction stalling throughout the country. Big home builders, Lennar, Pulte, these guys have let go land deals. They know that they're battening down the hatches, and it's going to be a year or two of very low new home sales. And it's the same thing with apartment construction.
Yeah.
Now that it's expensive, because the cost of money is one of the largest costs of building a new home or apartments, and that cost of money has now gone way up.
Yeah. David Rauch is a housing expert, also keeps an eye and an expert in construction issues nationwide. But I'm thinking individuals that have a couple extra $1 million in their pocket, some big builders, that would likely be a smart investment. If they can find the materials, that would be a smart investment. Let's create a few more apartment buildings because, well, as you said at the beginning, it's cheaper to rent right now than to buy, mortgage a home. That might be a safe investment if you've got the capital on hand.
Correct. And it's interesting, too. Recently, there was news that a lot of home builders, because they're sitting on homes that aren't selling, are now selling those new communities that they can't sell to private equity companies, Wall Street, who are in the business of renting them out. And that's a new thing we've seen in the United States in the past 5 years. Wall Street, private equity firms, Blackstone, and others getting into the home rental business. It's very interesting, and actually it's quite common down in Texas there too.
Isn't that undermining, as I mentioned, the private investor with the capital ready on hand to go ahead and try to invest in this and get some return with a high price of rent?
Absolutely, it's undermining home buyers generally. Last year, 2021. 24% of all new homes that were purchased by private equity firms to turn around and rent. And, they saw this impending recession coming.
There we go.
And so they see rentals as a great investment. And obviously, they're standing in line to buy a house with others, and they have all cash, and their borrowing costs are much lower than you and I. And so, they're able to buy houses much easier than the normal American, and it's something new, and we haven't seen it before, and it definitely hurts the folks that want to pursue the American dream of home ownership.
Doesn't take much to read the tea leaves on that one. You know that inflation is hot. You know the interest rates are going to go through the roof. You know that people are going to segue from purchasing homes to renting a place to sleep. Yeah. They're 18, 24 months ahead of everybody else. They're paying attention to the markets. You can make money doing that. Thank you, Dave. Pleasure speaking with you again. Appreciate your time. Housing expert David Rauch.
Happy Friday.
Yes, sir. Happy Friday.